Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is December 19th. You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we're talking about how AI is going to redefine the gamer experience. And so I'm actually really excited about this one. We got Jyunmi, Beth, I'm Brian. And, I'm going to immediately kick this one off because I'm definitely not a gamer, but I think the whole industry is really, really interesting. We sort of talked about this a little bit after yesterday's show once we were off air, and it got me even more excited about this idea. So, Jyunmi, I don't know, why don't you kick us off here, and then we'll see where the conversation goes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm really excited about this topic. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a gamer, but I love playing the occasional game. 4Xs are my favorite. But let's give you a quick breakdown.
Wait, what is that? What is that? What does that mean? 4Xs.
Oh, 4X.
Remember,
if you've ever heard of Sid Meier's Civilization, I mean, I don't want to jump into the rabbit hole here, but it's about building an empire and taking over the world and all those kinds of things.
By the way, we got Karl and Andy have joined us too, so now we have 5 of us. Go ahead, Jyunmi.
All right. Okay, so AI in gaming. All right. So first of all, AI's been in the gaming industry for a while now, right? They use machine learning and algorithms to help build out worlds and gameplay and all those kinds of things. But the biggest change has been generative AI, and this is what everyone in the industry is really buzzing about. So give you a little background. The gaming industry, if you're not familiar, is a multi-billion-dollar business. A AAA title or a top-tier title can cost hundreds of millions of dollars and years to develop. An example of that is if you've heard of Red Dead Redemption 2. It's an open world cowboy game that took $500 million to develop in 8 years. So it's I think that's probably the best example of how one of these games can turn out. And if you put in the time and effort, Red Dead Redemption 2 is actually a fantastic game.
Fantastic game. Now, what about Wii Tennis? Where would you put Wii Tennis into there?
Okay. So Wii Tennis, that's a party game. Yeah.
You don't have to answer that. I just want to set the level of where my understanding of gaming is right now. As I date myself horribly. Go ahead, Jyunmi.
All right. So that's just a little bit of background about the industry. So there's a lot of money flowing around in this, and it's a pretty huge industry, even, beyond just game development, but support and community around the games too. You have fans just you always want more games faster and faster and things like that. You have esports, was a huge $1 billion business in and of itself. So we're talking about a huge industry. Now, let's go to what the meat of what we're talking about today is generative AI. So what are the things that generative AI can really touch on or touchstone in the gaming industry? And it basically breaks down to two sides of a coin. Number one, the benefits to the development cycle. Okay. So if anyone's familiar with the gaming industry, because it's a little cutthroat in terms of release schedule, they have something called the crunch. And this is a terrible practice, and trying to develop ways to cut down on this. And the crunch is essentially, there is an absolute deadline that games need to come out so that the gamers and the users will have that at a steady place. Because if they don't, then the attention goes to other games that are released. So big game developers will enforce this crunch on their teams to really, spit out a game, and that can cause problems. But I won't go down that path too much. But essentially, what I see is generative AI has huge benefits to alleviating some of that crunch, and that's just because it will shorten down development time. All right. So quick overview. Just going to preference, I'm not going into too much detail on this process, but to just give you some broad strokes. So you can break down the production like other creative avenues is pre-production, production, and post-production. So pre-production, you do a lot of concept art. And one of the examples that I found when they were trying to develop concept art and assets is that can take up to like 3 weeks to do that concept art process. And with generative AI, that ideation process can get cut down to a day. So you save almost 3 weeks of development time just on just in the concept art phase. Um, and so then if we're going to talk about production after that point, where you're talking about your development of 3D assets, right? So we're talking about modeling, texture, animation, all of that can be cut down with generative AI as well. And that'll shorten things down. So like, for example, there was a company that recently got, I think like $25 million seed round because they had developed a proprietary generative AI process to take 2D images, right, and turn them into 3D models. Now, that process takes a long time to do, right? It's painstaking and tedious, and that's where a lot of development time comes from. So that introduction of that technique and that tool should shorten down the whole development time as well. So that's where we're seeing a lot of time savers here. And then finally in post-production, it's a testing process, launching, that's platform distribution, and then monitoring and maintenance after the launch. And a lot of AI tools and things like that can help monitor that and streamline flagging potential issues as they come in. And that has a lot of customer service aspects that AI can help with. On the other side of the coin, we see huge benefits to the user experience for the gamer, right? So we're talking about with generative AI, you can get a truly personalized gaming experience, right? And we sort of talked about this offline yesterday. We're talking about procedural content generated, right? Where the content is generated based on the behavior of the player, right? How they play, the choices they make, the places they go, right? And the things they do, that can all feed into generative AI to generate unique experiences for them, unique storylines, unique events, right? And even NPCs, right? That is a concept that's been in gaming forever, where you have these NPCs in the world that you converse with, you interact with, and for the most part, they have gotten better and better in becoming more realistic and more interactive. But with generative AI, we can go from storylines, speech development, body movement, body language, all those kinds of things together to have a more realistic avatar to interact with. And depending on what kind of input the gamer gives. So if you have speech integrated, lots of new games have regional or distance speech, so you can hear other players speaking, how close they are or far away they are from you. So you can integrate that into how an NPC reacts. They don't necessarily need to be on a pre-programmed cycle. If anyone's ever played Skyrim, you sometimes have to wait for an entire day to pass where a merchant goes from their home to their store and back again before you can buy the thing that you need. And all of these elements so that you can have these really developed characters and increasing, of course, the gamer experience.
Is this just real quick? I was just gonna ask a question real quick. Like, so, okay, you just real quick, because you originally started talking about the back end, the development side of it, right, before the user, and then now we're talking more about like the user experience. I guess my question is, it seems to me that this is a win-win. Both sides are for this. Yeah. Would you say that's fair? Like, that the companies are looking at their ROI. They're looking at time to go from concept to gameplay, whatever that period of time is. And they're able to use AI and all sorts of things like lighting and modeling and things like that used to take whole side departments, not to mention rendering. I can remember my buddies who work for Pixar now, but back when they were in college in 2099 in that area, it was a whole room to render 1 30-second thing in their portfolio. And God help you if that damn room hiccuped while they were trying to do their portfolio, it would ruin you. I can remember my buddy David talking about that. So there's that side of it. Then you're talking about the user side. But you're generally saying like, is this something, if you're a gamer, I mean, just, I guess, a general term, I'm sure there's many times of gamers, are you leaning into this? Are you going like, yes, this is the next evolution of role playing, game playing, that I'm ready to take this to an area where my experience is truly unique to me because of the interactions I've had? And potentially, are we saying that no other player could have the exact same experience because the conversations are being created on the spot? Is that right?
Yeah, potentially you could have that. You could have that experience where every gamer's playthrough of whatever type of game it is going to be a unique experience to varying degrees, and things like that. I'm sure an open world MMO style RPG has this is where my mind immediately goes to, because one of the things that I really don't like about MMOs personally is I'm doing the exact same storyline as everybody else, right?
And MMO is
what? We're just redoing the whole RPG thing over and over. What's that?
MMO RPG. What are they?
MMO RPG.
Yeah. No, what are they?
Oh, sorry. Massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Massively all right, break that down for me. Massively multiplayer.
Yeah, like World of Warcraft.
Nothing for me. Thank you, Karl. That does nothing for me.
So massively multiplayer online, MMO. It basically you can have thousands of players in the same game at the same time.
Got it. Okay.
Gotcha. RPG, role-playing game.
Okay.
So you're playing a character, you're developing your skills and going on adventures, right? Gotcha. Being part of the storyline. And so one of the big issues I've had with that is you're doing the exact same storyline as everybody else. But with generative AI and putting those elements in, every conversation with an NPC I have can be different. Stories, unique stories and adventure lines can be developed. And I can go on them. And it's so expansive. It's endless gaming. That's kind of where we're going down. It's endless playthroughs. It's always going to be a little different than what you played through before. And then it can also be that could be multiplied by the kind of characters that you're playing, and you can have endless generation of imagery and assets and things like that, and combinations of characters as well. So I mean that's a whole other path we can talk another whole other 2 or 3 shows about. But in the broad strokes, that's the power that generative AI can bring to gaming, is that you have endless possibilities based off of that. Now, it'll take a few years to really get it going, but not that many. We're starting to see games specifically developed with generative AI. There's one called Aeromancer that I was reading in this one article that uses Gen AI to generate your avatar, and the imagery that's used for your characters and the type of characters you have. So these are things that are already showing up.
So can I just jump in here?
Oh, Beth, you're muted.
Yeah, and go ahead, Karl, too, Beth.
Sorry, Beth, go ahead.
One of the things that I've seen in the conversation of this is that it's not just endless, but it's just in time, right?
Yeah.
And the first generation is a skin. So if you turn, you can see the skin of it. And then if you decide to climb the tree, now the tree magically becomes 3-dimensional, and now you can, right? So you're only shown, it's only creating, because it's artificial intelligence and it's smart, it's only creating what you need it to be in that moment, which makes it faster. Everything that's being created doesn't have to be full 3D. It starts as a skin.
Exactly. And that concept's been in gaming for a while. That's the procedural generated terrain and things like that. Why you can only see so far into into the horizon and things like that. But this brings it even closer. You're right. So it's
Then
just every change then can be generated instantaneously. And so games nowadays are I guess I was reading this one Google blog about it where they call them live games, right? That's where most games live now. It's constantly updated from the servers, whether that be terrain, position of characters, on all those kinds of things. Pretty much any mobile game is a live game because it's constantly updating with information from the servers. And they brought up a concept called the living game. So that's like the next evolution, where the game that is live is living, because like a living document, it constantly changes by the input of the gamer. So that's what this all really comes down to, is the gamer's behavior is interpreted by the AI and new content is generated for that user, for that gamer.
So does that mean like what would you call it? Red Dawn? What was the big game you told me before?
Red Dead Redemption.
That one, Red Dead Redemption. So like that one, instead of them having definitive like rollout dates, you think the future may be just a live continuous version where essentially a new adventure, a new land, if that's a thing, just gets dropped almost like an app update. But you're saying like the environment in this live version, if that was to exist, that would just be ongoing and continuous, and they would just make updates and adjustments along the way. Does that get rid of this idea of pushing to a launch date? Maybe for a new package, right? But not necessarily for a net new game or something like that. I don't know. But
right. So depending on the type of game, so that those elements that you've described are actually a mainstay of MMOs, right? There's always some new DLC or downloadable content, right? And they have their own development cycle, because an MMO is a live game. It is something that people are playing constantly. They're logging in, logging off, and the world is persistent, right, to a certain degree. And the big advantage Gen AI has in those kinds of games is, you're right, it will shorten down, number one, just development cycle in general will shorten down the amount of time that's needed to develop. Now we'll have to see what the balance of is the time saved just to develop more, or is the time saved to spend more or more efficient or better time spent on the development. And I think that's going to be a question for developers and teams like that, to see if they can just get a better quality game out. And I think that's what most people want on the gamer side is better quality, not pushed to just beat the release date of the next big AAA title.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, shifting away from online gaming, which is taking, I expect, a large part of the market now, compared to contained console games on Xbox or PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
Those consoles use GPUs, and
Mm-hmm.
those are graphics processing units, the specialized chips that happen to be the same architecture of chips that run AI models. So is there an indication that those consoles are going to be the focus of some new AI development that is not so much dependent on a farm of GPUs up in the sky in the cloud that's running an MMO, but rather what you can do locally on your machine? And maybe it's the case that these consoles, which are the least expensive way that you can get a really powerful set of GPUs into your home, maybe those are going to be a platform for other forms of AI other than gaming, because they happen to have the right architecture to perform it locally.
Well, speaking to what you're saying, it's pretty much every gaming system, whether it's a PC or a console or whatnot, are going to have high-end GPU processors in them. But I think it is interesting about the idea of offloading some of the compute to those those hardwares. Essentially, they're used already to generate all of the imagery and everything locally on your machine. It's just the data that's grabbed from the servers. And pretty much every game now and every console is internet enabled, and all the content is essentially a live game. There's very little percentage that are completely standalone on a disc, those kinds of things. And so they've just translated to all internet or a live game.
Is that true of mobile games as well? Like you're really not.
100%. Yeah, it's even a higher percentage on mobile games. It could be more because of its data collection side of things, but if everything's cloud-based, if everything's a live game, then the hardware requirements and the compute power is offloaded to the servers, and less data, less overhead needs to be put on the local hardware, so that you can have more elaborate games on smaller hardware. So mobile games specifically run mostly on the servers, and then you have your local app, because you don't want to take up too much space. The hardware's processing units is limited, and those kinds of things. You only have limited resources, so most of that's offloaded to the servers. Now, I did want to touch upon a little bit about what we're seeing, or what people have been thinking about for future sight in this space. I already mentioned living games versus live games, where games are ever changing, endless possibilities, and the game's servers just stay alive. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an MMO. It could be a single player experience, and those are usually the ones that have the most developed storylines, and the best developed narratives. And things like the example, Red Dead Redemption 2 has a fantastic series of stories and characters, and that's pretty much a single player experience. There is some multiplayer aspects that they add on, but that's a secondary thing. So I think you'll see more benefits in that space, in those types of games initially. So maybe look at those developers developing those that suite or genre of types of games when you want to see AI develop. But you should see them in MMOs and other game types. Another big one people are talking about is AI in VR or AR, right? So AI has the ability to generate all of this imagery on the fly, and you can overlay it if you're doing augmented reality. You're doing your AR as you're walking along. You see new glasses, you got the pin now, you got your phone camera looking at things, and this is going to be all live updated information. This is where AI assistants really come into play, because they can tell you what you're looking at in real time, things like that. VR is the same kind of thing, where but you can create entire environments for you to live in, essentially. I did find two other points that, and one of the main articles that I was looking at was from a16z.com. That's the Andreessen Horowitz VC group. So if you want to learn more and go really nitty gritty onto the business side, I recommend their article. But they're talking about we'll see some quick developments coming out, called an all-in-one development tool for AI for AI-enabled gaming development. So think like Adobe Creative Cloud, but for game development, all packaged together, working on all your elements. And the other thing is the rise of the micro game studio. So we've had indie game studios for a while now, and sometimes they make just a viral hit or just cult classics that come out, and people really enjoy the gaming experience. And it's not really always about the AAA experience with elaborate graphics and things like that. And so But if you have these all-in-one tools, and AI does break down your entire development cycle to, a matter of weeks instead of years, or maybe a couple of months, you'll just see this plethora of AI enabled or AI generated games that we can see from everybody and anybody. And I'm a big fan of lowering the bar, right? Getting more people into a space, because when you have these big monolithic organizations or companies, it's hard to find, distribution. It's hard to get outreach and get in front of people's eyeballs. And so I think with the rise of those micro game studios who could pop up, develop a hit game, and launch from there, platforms and channels will be very important to get eyeballs on those games. So Steam will be even more important. Everybody's Steam version will be more important. We're going to see, I think there'll be more attention spent to the content development on, or content around gaming, and just highlighting those kinds of things.
So I do have a question here. Like, okay, we talked about like the gaming industry and stuff, but my my business hat says, if I put on my business hat, it says, okay, hold on. If we're shorting production time, if we're making it cheaper, if it's easier to essentially take templates down the road and create and stand up games, well, that means that all the things in business that we look to gamify in order to get adoption rates for end users could also be hugely impacted by this. Oh, yeah. And so I'd be curious for anybody's, thoughts on that, on like, what does this mean for business? Because like, there's so many different areas where the word gamification or gamify comes up in conversation, usually because you're on some platform, you're trying to get some training out to the team or whatever. And then you're trying to say, man, it's really hard to get people to change or to adopt new rules or whatever the case is, or just learn new processes like ChatGPT, and trying to get that out to a team of people. It's hard. It seems easy, especially if we're talking about it, but it's actually a really hard thing to do. So then you look to gamify it. How can we make this fun? How can we make this sticky? How can we add a role to it or a story to it or something like that? And it sounds to me like a lot of what you're talking about will also, if it's not already, work its way into day-to-day business, because if it's that much easier to stand up, then it's going to become a real value or an asset to a company, maybe the enterprise to start with. But what's to stop Salesforce from gamifying a lot of their paths? What's it called? Trailhead, Beth? With Salesforce, like Trailhead. What's to stop them from just turning a lot of Trailhead into an actual, role-playing game or first-person, whatever type game to it, I don't know. I'm just curious what you guys think. Is that where this is going?
Well, one thing I think we have to think about too is this reminds me of a whole bunch of stuff when people were talking about creating NFTs for video games. And I think there's a couple things to unpack. One is you can create games, no problems. That's like, some games will cost more money. Some you can generate games right now, but it depends on who you want to reach. Because if you're reaching the gamer like Jyunmi or myself, if your game sucks, I don't care how good your graphics are, what you did, we're not gonna play it. So, and that's why the gaming industry is so cutthroat and so hard to get into, because your game actually has to play well, everything around it, right? There's a reason why Metacritic exists, IGN, GameSpot, all these review sites, because once what is it like? There's sometimes if a game has a blackout, you kind of know, you're like, wait a minute, that game's gonna suck, because they've tested it and somebody's already seen it and it's not very good, and they need to make the sales, or else once the reviews come out, it's not gonna do well. So right. I think that's a big thing, is when people say, oh, I'm gonna create games. It's like, yeah, you can create games all you want. You can generate games, you can generate all the things, but who's your audience, and are they actually gonna play it? And are they actually gonna like it? And are they gonna keep playing it? Because that's always the big thing. Is like, how can you keep people playing your games, which then leads to a little bit of a loyalty going to the next game and so on. So I think that's a big thing. It's like, oh, we can create game now. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but like, that's why I'm always skeptical about like, you know, when I see GPTs, oh, well, you can create this game. I'm like, who's gonna play that? You? Like, who is going to play that game that you made Pong with? Like, no, I
Yeah.
don't care if you can make that. And yes, maybe in the future you can make your own games, but I still think it's like people are gonna have to like the game that you're building,
Right.
and
Well,
there's
I
a
think that
reason
goes
why.
back to the story, right? I mean, a
Yes,
lot of people are saying right now, like Pixar has lost its way because Pixar movies, a few of them now have um, not performed maybe as well as they maybe would have liked to. Right. For a while, Pixar was like just hit after hit after hit as far as the movie theaters go, and people there's been open talk about Disney and how they influence whatever the case is, but ultimately Pixar's whole thing was we can tell a damn good story and everything is secondary to that. So I think that kind of hits on what you're saying, Karl. Is like you got to have a good experience, a good story for it to even have a shot.
so, story,
Which
story, not so much story too, because I've seen games that have an amazing story, but if your gameplay is off or that something's off in the game, and gamers are so fickle, like if yeah, like I'm just thinking about like an RPG, the story's amazing, but the combat is terrible. That game's gonna get like
like the
6.5.
user experience. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I got you.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
so this makes me think. This makes me think of the connection to Friday's show, which was about business intelligence, right? So the AI is not only generating all this stuff, but it's also analyzing on the back end these and I don't know what the metrics are, but you don't have to do A/B testing. You could do ABCDE testing,
Mm.
and the like make that shift as you're seeing what is the most engaging for your gamers, right? Like if you make a game that sucks, that's a problem. But if you are shifting the game based on avoiding suckage in real time, you may be able to like keep
Yeah.
hold of stuff in a way that you haven't been able to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Those are
not like it
official
goes out the
industry
door and you.
terms, actually, right?
Yeah.
So
You can
shifting based
you can
on real
save
time
it
Right.
in
Avoid suckage. Right.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Save it in real time. Now, that makes sense to me, Beth. I think I get that. Like, you don't, maybe the pressure isn't so much on the day it's released as the day it has to be perfect. There might be some more, leeway here with AI to make some pretty rapid, adjustments for the early users. And there's always going to be early beta users that like to be beta users that like to get in there. They're okay with things not working perfectly because they're early and they're adopters. So I think there's probably still a lot to that. We're kind of 2 minutes over here, so I'd love to wrap this up. Thoughts on, what does this mean for our listeners? What should we be paying attention to in 2024? Is this just like, no, I mean, this is coming and, it'll roll out as it rolls out? Or is there something that people should be like looking for? Is there something that's going to make an impact maybe for them or their business? I don't know. What do you guys think as we wrap it up?
I think if there's anyone whose business is the gaming industry and you are sleeping on AI, which you probably aren't, but I'd say pay close attention on how generative AI is developing in your tools. I think if you can save even you can save a week of development time on any part of the component. And this is probably like concept or 2D asset generation, things like that. If you can save on any of those components, you'll see a huge ROI on your on the time spent or the time saved. Really, I think if you do anything, just look at those tools and see if they're a fit there, because I think just saving time on your development cycle, it will be huge.
Nice.
I'll say that the futurists who imagine how AI might take over the human population and subjugate it say that it would be a very clever AI. They wouldn't try to do something that would be domineering. They would just distract us so heavily by engaging us in video games that we would no longer be a threat to them and consumption of their resources other than those that have been rationed to us for the purpose of engaging in those games. So cautionary tale there.
Look for AI opium dens coming to your neighborhood soon. That's what we're looking at.
No.
Karl, any last thoughts since you're our other gamer? No offense if Beth or Andy, I don't know if you guys are gamers, but since Karl, you identified as a gamer, any last thoughts on this, Karl? We'll wrap it up.
For me, from a gamer perspective, all I'm really looking for is better, like either NPCs, so non-playable characters, or better opponents in video games, because sometimes they're either ridiculously too hard or ridiculously like too easy, and there's like you're always looking for like, hey, it'd be really neat for the whatever you're playing against, monsters, other players, whatever, that they can take on real characteristics of like gamers. So imagine that's what you're sort of looking for, because then you'll have a more realistic experience, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Well, the rest of this week, tomorrow we have the news. So that should be fun. And then on Thursday, we're talking about AI and the role of college and education, but specifically college and what does it mean? How will it change? A couple of us have kids in the same, Robert Steinob, but me, Karl, Robert, we all have kids around the same age. And, we're probably all 5 years out from college for them. And so what does that mean for them? What is going to happen in the next 5 years? So we'll talk about that on Thursday. And then Friday, I mentioned it yesterday, but it's our 100th episode. So come on back for a fun episode. We're going to talk about some of our favorite episodes, maybe the ones that hit, miss, the ones we remember the most out of the first 100. I know, Karl, you said it to me. I think you were the first one that kind of say the other day, you said, did we talk about this on a show yet? And I thought, yeah, we were right about at that level. So 50, we all could remember what the hell we talked about. At 100, we're starting to think, did we do a show on this? Did we already talk about this for 30 minutes? So I think that's going to be fun as that expands more to figure out where we want to dive back into. So that's the rest of this week, guys. Come on back and see us. Thank you to Jyunmi for all your research on this one. Tons learned on this. Great job. And we'll be
really quick. I just want to shout out to Jen. Thanks for joining us on this episode. I know I talked a lot, but same, Jen. Yes, adventure envy. I think that's going to be a thing.
Love it. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe in 2024 is my year. Maybe I'm going to turn into a gamer. It could happen.
Hey, I think we could get a guild together.
Bye.
Aloha.